Good evening and welcome to the September meeting of the Reston Planning and Zoning Committee. We really just have one application tonight, but I do want to just touch on real quickly. We have, we've been posting our meeting minutes by video on our website, which has at least been a good way to get something out there quickly and inform everybody. I haven't been able to talk to Michelle lately about the status of certain meeting minutes, so I'll try to do that. And before my dog keeps squeaking her toy here in front of me, I'm gonna turn this over to Lynn Strobel to talk about Vantage Hill. Now, my understanding tonight is Vantage Hill is preferably here for a vote tonight.
Correct.
Because they have a planning commission meeting coming up. It's immediately after our October meeting, so it would not be advantageous to take it down to the wire if that's what happened. But so depending on how things go tonight, but that is going to be the hope of the applicant is to have a discussion. They gave out a summary of how some of our comments were responded to, and we'll see how the discussion goes tonight. So Lynn, I'm going to turn it right over to you.
Okay, great. Well, I thank you very much and appreciate the opportunity to be here this evening. I'll do a few introductions and then we have a PowerPoint presentation that we would like to walk through, and then certainly we're available here to answer questions. So with me here this evening is Robbie Malm with Craft Bark, and he has been working, of course, very diligently on this application for quite some time. And I don't see him on the line. Typically, we have Rob Schumann from Vantage Hill. I don't know if someone else is on the line with Vantage Hill, but they are also, kind of working with us cooperatively on this application. We have Aaron Vinson from Walter L. Phillips, the civil engineer, and Kelly Pasesny in my office. So with that, I will see if Kelly can put up our presentation. And what I thought I would do is try to go through and answer, some of the questions that we heard from last time. And certainly we have everyone here if there are additional questions. So taking a look at the first slide, I'm just going to give a very brief overview here of the application property. And I think most, if not all of you, were at our meeting last month. And so you're familiar with our proposal. But just very briefly, this is Vantage Hill. It's a property that's on the south side of Barron Cameron at the intersection of Vantage Hill Road and Wainwright. The total property area is about 14.59 acres. And the property has been developed for quite some time. It was originally developed as an apartment complex in 1967. And then it was converted to a condominium in 1984. And if we go to the next slide, this is just going to be an aerial of the property, just an aerial view, which I always think is helpful. And you may recall from our last meeting, we talked about the fact that the community, given its age, is struggling with the maintenance of its infrastructure. There are some rather expensive improvements that need to be done. They need better windows for insulation. They need updates to heating and cooling systems. And so they really have been, struggling with how to take care of some of these capital costs. And they've been exploring, I think, for a number of years, different opportunities. And if we go to the next slide, what we have been pursuing on behalf of Craftmark is a proposal of the condominium to sell. Really, it's an underutilized portion of their property. The area that they're proposing to sell is currently the community swimming pool, but it has been abandoned because they haven't had the funds to maintain it and keep it operational. So they're going to be selling this 2.15 acre portion of their property that you see here. That currently is the abandoned swimming pool, common area, and some surface parking. And what that would do is it would allow for the development of 28 single-family attached dwelling units. And through this sale, they're going to be generating the revenue that they need to address, like I say, a number of, it's really a backlog of capital improvements that need to be done. So what you're seeing in front of you is the concept plan that was approved in concept by the DRB. And just for background, we have been to the DRB a number of times. We went to them in August. We did receive their conceptual approval for our design and materials, and we go back to them tomorrow night. And I'm hoping that we'll have a final decision tomorrow evening. So I'm really not going to go through a lot of our design. I think we talked about that last month. We've been through quite a process to get to where we are today. It's been a very thoughtful process. Ended up with, redesigning the site. We ended up losing some units. But this is the plan that we currently have processing before the DRB, but also before Fairfax County. We're providing a proffered condition amendment and a PRC plan amendment that we've been working on with staff. We've been working with Lauren Hall as our staff coordinator. And as was mentioned, we have a hearing date before the Planning Commission coming up, I believe, on November 2nd. So that's why, if possible, we would like the opportunity to receive your recommendation this evening. So I'm going to go through just some of the questions that we heard last time and provide responses. And I'll get some help on this from Aaron and Robbie. But if we could go to the first slide. I think that, we had a lot of conversation last time about, landscaping, preservation of existing trees and new plantings. I think there was a suggestion to create a small community gathering area across from what you see there is Unit 25. And we are going to take that suggestion. We are committed to installing, I believe it's a total of 6 benches in the property. We're going to put one here. We're going to work on that landscaping a bit, and we will create that as a little bit of a gathering area. And that leads us to the trees, the number of trees preserved, and the number of trees planted. And I'm going to turn this over to Aaron because I know he's got all of that information at his fingertips and he can walk us through that. So,
sure.
Aaron?
Yeah, sure. Thanks, Lynn. Hi, everybody. Aaron Benson with Walter Phillips. Just a quick overview. We spent some time at our last meeting talking about our overall landscape approach and tree preservation. Just to back that up with a few more details, there was a question as to how many trees we are proposing to remove. That number is 59. We are taking down 59 trees as part of this application. Those are a combination of large mature trees, smaller trees, and that also includes a small number of trees on site that are dead. When we contrast that to the thousands of trees throughout the community, we think we're being relatively effective in terms of maximizing tree preservation. I'll also point out that just for context, relative to the county's minimum requirements for tree preservation, we are providing roughly 150% of our minimum tree preservation requirement. So we're far exceeding the county minimums, not that meeting the county minimums are necessarily something to pin a ribbon on us for, but we are exceeding those by a significant margin. And then in addition to that, we're planting a significant number of trees. So we're planting 31 large canopy trees. We're planting 8 or 50 ornamental trees, excuse me, 8 ornamental trees, 42 small evergreens, 5 large evergreens, and then about 240 shrubs and about 38 smaller trees. So that all adds up to the quantity of trees, that just the gross number of trees increasing significantly relative to what's there. And the overall canopy, again, between existing canopy that will be preserved and proposed canopy, the overall tree canopy will remain roughly the same when the trees that we have proposed reach maturity.
Thank you, Aaron. Before we move on to the next slide, were there any other questions about that landscaping or tree preservation? I think Mr. Kennedy might be speaking, but he's on mute.
There, I'm unmuted. Yes, I'm glad you interrupted because the proposal, the discussion that Aaron just provided us, I think helps, but the presentation in your recent response to these questions wasn't giving me the bottom line. But I think you said, Aaron, that there were 59 trees that will be removed. And were you saying that 31 of those are large trees?
No, I rattle off a lot of numbers, and so sorry for any confusion there. 59 total trees will be removed, and that is a combination. I don't have those exact numbers, but that is a combination of large mature trees, the ones that you can see from Wainwright. Right, there's several. There's a dozen or more relatively very large mature trees that will come down, and then that number also includes smaller understory trees, and it includes a small number of trees that have already died and will need to come down, regardless.
Let me ask you to clarify that. Of those very large trees, we're going to be losing how many again?
I don't have that exact number. I'll see if I can come up with that while we're talking. But 59 is a. I would say somewhere between a dozen and 20, if I had to guess.
Okay, and it's the big trees that concern me most, because I assume we're leaving a lot of the big trees that you talked about seeing from the street out there, and once you get into the area for this proposal. That's, I don't know how you want to try to express that, but that's my concern. We can always plant new trees, but they're going to be small trees for a while anyway, and they don't catch up with the big trees. So what's the sense? I'd like you to pin that down as much as possible. Of the big trees, how many are going to be left?
Sure. Let me look at that while we continue. And then I'll just add, and Robbie, I know you wanted to jump in here, but I will also add, big trees have a lot of value. I don't want to devalue the what large mature trees can provide, that it's significant. But one of the things that we were focused on too with this plan is large trees have value, small trees have value in terms of how our development will be experienced by our neighbors and from the street. And so with newer trees, as they mature, they will over time replace the canopy that the mature trees provide today. But more than that, in the very short term, they will provide a significant screening of our development from our neighbors and from people using Wainwright Drive, in terms of screening our proposed houses from the view from the street and from the surrounding properties. So
I have no intention of being a problem maker on this, but I do want to get back to me somehow and to make sure that we're saving as many of the big trees as possible. And if it's at least half or something like that, that's a good enough. That may be a good enough number. But please help us. Thank you.
Sure, I think I can chime in and provide some useful information on this. To take a step backwards, when we first started working with Vantage Hill on this, one of the criteria that they put in front of us was to save the mature trees in the southeast quadrant of the site, which is the lower right-hand corner. So there's a batch of some of the largest trees in that lower right corner in plan view. And so we are going to push the development as far away from that as possible, including the limits of disturbance. That's also the trees that the adjacent Vantage Hill building looks out upon, and it was important for those unit owners to preserve those trees as well. So we've pushed the development, north and west away from those trees, and pushed the limits of disturbance away from those trees in order to allow their preservation. Most of the trees that will be taken down are right along Wainwright Drive, and some along Vantage Hill, some smaller ones along Vantage Hill. And a lot of them are growing out of at the very top of or out of the steep embankment that exists today. So the current conditions of the site are that Wainwright Drive drops down pretty significantly as you enter the site, maybe 10, 12 plus feet. And a lot of those trees are growing at the top of that, or, you know, on the side of the slope itself, which is not an ideal place for a tree of that size to grow. And I know they've lost a few over the years. It's been very costly for Vantage Hill to remove these sick trees. If you see them today, a lot of the uppermost canopies, they're very thin. So that whole area needs to be regraded regardless. You know, there's utility connections that go in there. So those trees, there is no way to save those trees. So the trees we focused on saving were the ones I started with on the southeast quadrant.
Sounds good so far. Thank you very much.
We will still ask Aaron if he can come up with some
Yeah,
numbers here in the next few
and
minutes.
I was just looking at our plan while we were talking, and so, you know, don't hold me to these exact numbers, but I think we're in the ballpark. Of the 59 trees that are going to be removed, by my rough count, 17 are pretty large, mature canopy trees. And then I would contrast that to trees of a comparable size that we're proposing to save. We are saving roughly 11 trees of 11 large canopy trees. Oh, you're muted.
I believe you're muted.
Yes, thanks. Those, I wish the numbers were a little better, a little closer, but I hear your argument, and I think you've answered my question. So I will certainly work with that. Thanks.
Rob, I have a quick comment if that's okay.
Sure, John.
Thank you. And I agree with Dick, and it's certainly a challenge that we have here in Fairfax County and Reston to maintain as much of the tree canopy, replace it as best we can. So, and I certainly understand the limitations that you have here on that. And I think you're doing the best that you can in the areas that you are. The thing that Robert just mentioned about the trees dying is a major concern right now, I think, for Fairfax County and Reston, where a lot of the trees are either getting attacked by disease or different types of bugs and things like that. And a lot of trees are dying. I mean, you can see it all over the area. And a lot of them may be mature, and it's just time. And I think generally we need to be thinking about how do we replace those trees also. So during our last meeting, I commented that I thought it would be good if the developer looked at the overall development in addition to this area to consider additional areas where they can plant new trees and help reestablish that canopy over time. And I think if we continue to do that on all the developments over time, it will definitely help maintain and grow that canopy back that we're definitely losing. And all of us who live here can see it every day because we're seeing trees year after year die. So I personally would like to see some further efforts in other parts of the development to add trees, knowing that you're limited in the limits of the new development, but what else can you do in other parts of the development?
I think you bring up a good point, and that's something that we have looked at. And so just two quick points to that. One, when you look at our overall plan, and it's not part of this presentation, but when you look at the tree canopy throughout the entire Vantage Hill neighborhood, it's significant. Vantage Hill is one of these old school original Reston neighborhoods that was designed and built with tree preservation in mind, and you can tell when you walk around the site today, it's beautiful in terms of the mature trees that are around the site. The amount of mature tree canopy throughout the site actually presents a little bit of a challenge when we talk about supplementing what's there, right? Because you have to cut into root zones to plant new trees. Doesn't mean it's impossible. We are proposing throughout the rest of the site where we are adding some additional parking to add a significant amount of additional trees throughout the property. In total, after we take out the 59 trees that we're proposing to remove, we're proposing to plant 124 trees, and that includes what's happening around us, plus some additional trees throughout the community. And then we're also adding a significant amount of shrubs and smaller trees. I think 241 shrubs are proposed throughout our property and throughout the rest of the community. So we can certainly look for ways to do more, but I did just want to point out that we have made efforts to supplement the landscaping throughout the community in addition to just our specific project site.
Sure.
Alright.
And I
Sure.
understand that and appreciate that. I guess, you know, there are a couple options. One, you can analyze that, or you could say something like, we're willing to add X number of additional, you know, canopy trees in addition to what we've shown here, as we can fit them in as part of the application. Something like that. Nothing crazy, nothing onerous, but just something that we could all sort of start to wrap our heads around in terms of how do we continue to, you know, continue the canopy here that we all enjoy.
One clarifying question. Are you suggesting additional trees within the existing Vantage Hill neighborhood or outside of that?
Within Vantage Hill.
Okay.
Yes.
Yeah. I don't know what the count is, but within Vantage Hill, you know, I'm just looking at the screen you guys see too. There might be, what's there, 12, 15 proposed deciduous canopy trees
Roughly.
off the townhouse site in greater Vantage Hill area, planted in various medians and where we'll be doing some parking space relocation.
Correct. That's about right. Yeah. Plus some additional understory plantings over by the RPA and things like that.
Yeah, I'm gonna suggest, let's let the Lynn and the team finish their presentation, and maybe that'll help answer some of these questions.
Yeah, let's keep going. So if we go back, Kelly, to our next slide. We had a lot of discussion at the last meeting about the alleys and making sure that they did not appear cluttered with things like HVAC. So I am going to start this description, and Robbie will probably want to add to it as I go on. But I wanted to start off by giving the actual dimension of the alleys, and those alleys are 23 feet wide. I think that you've probably seen some communities go down to 20 feet. This is larger than that. We have a minimum width of 23 feet. And we also have varying driveway apron depths. But I think that what's most important, and we really worked on this with the DRB, is that we deliberately shifted the driveways and garage doors to kind of one side of the unit or the other in an effort to provide wider islands so that we could accommodate not only the HVAC system, but the screening of those systems. And it might be a little hard to see, but this is what we shared with the DRB, and this is what we're doing. Now, the architecture is different. This was done as just kind of a model in our prior presentations to the DRB. So it doesn't reflect the building materials or building colors, but it does reflect that design element whereby we've, again, created wider islands for HVAC, but to be able to screen those with landscaping. So I wanted to share that. And then I also have another slide about the electrical, but I wanted to offer that and the landscaping that's proposed. And then we also have an area within the garage that's going to allow for the trash cans to be stored inside the garage without impacting the parking of two cars. So before I go on to the electrical meters, Robbie, did you want to add to that?
Sure. I think I can maybe add one useful tidbit in that, you know, we're talking about alley dimensions of 23 feet. And then on top of that is the driveway dimensions. At its smallest, they're 5 feet, which would give you an additional 10 feet of space building to building. So at its narrowest, we're talking about 33 feet from building face to building face across the alley. And then it varies throughout the site. So I believe at its widest, which is between units 1, 2, and 3, and then unit 12 is directly across from that. It's at an angle, but it ranges from 49 to 62 feet, about an average of 55 feet there. So it is variable throughout the site. At its narrowest at the very beginning and the very end, we're 33, but it does open up in the core of the site to about 55 feet average.
And then if we go to the next slide, Kelly, I think we also had talked about the electric meter locations. And this is the proposal, and this does have to be approved by Dominion, is that they are going to be clustered on the low visibility side of the building. And I know that, again, Robbie, you may want to add to this, but we thought this would help in making that alley not appear cluttered. So.
Sure. I guess I'll just add that I understand the comment where it's coming from. Oftentimes, alleys are the business sides of developments, and they can seem cluttered with all the utility meters, HVAC units, trash cans, etc. To a certain extent, this did come up during our early DRB meetings, especially around the HVAC units, which is what prompted the treating of the driveways or the design of the driveways. That's also where we're showing brick paver driveways for an aesthetic break in the hardscape. That's also where that design element was born, and also the electric meters. Now this design is very clean. It does need to be approved. All the dry utility plans need to be approved by the utility providers, and every site is different. But this is a project within Dominion's territory. So when we do this, it frees up the wall space along the alley. So what we should have back there is, utility-wise, if this design gets approved by Dominion, is just the HVAC units. Electric meters would be on the side, and gas meters would be on the front. And trash cans would, of course, need to be in the alley on trash days only. And we can control that with the association documents that they're only allowed outside the garage during those specific times, and all other times they need to be stored inside the unit.
And Rob, would you just prefer that I go through the presentation? We'll take all the questions at the end, or should we
Yeah.
pause here?
Yes, no, I think we should let
Okay.
you finish.
All right, very good. So let's talk a little bit about parking. This was also brought up as a question. And just kind of by the numbers, and this would be the parking on site. So just by the numbers, currently 228 parking spaces. With our proposed development, the requirement is 304, and we're providing 308. But what this exhibit hopefully shows you is that, we have the 56 in green, the garage parking spaces. We have 253 on-site surface, which you see in the yellow, but we also have a lot of on-street parking. So I think there were questions about, well, where would potentially people park if they couldn't find a visitor space on site? Well, we think that there's plenty of parking on the street. There are about 50 spaces on Wainwright Drive and Vantage Hill Road that are available for parking. So I think that we do have, not only do we meet the requirement on site, I think that there's ample parking just in this area. And again, Robbie, I don't know if you want to add to that.
I could say this same thing slightly differently, in that one of the original, again, criteria working with Vantage Hill was they were selling off, their pool and some surface parking. And so the agreement was that we were going to replace all their lots parking spaces one for one throughout the other portion of their site, which we've done actually with a surplus. We've done that when we have a couple extra. So they park. We meet the parking requirements on our townhouse sites, on our townhouse side of the site, which stands alone, and that's before we get to the street parking, which from a a county entitlement perspective, we don't actually get credit for because it's off-site, but it is there and available. It's not striped, but it is parallel parking.
So let's talk a little bit about our proposed recreation. And we've got a couple things to talk about, but I'm just going to start with the climbing wall. Well, actually, where I'll start is that, one thing that you all had asked the last time is for us to talk to the staff about our proffered park contribution. and whether that contribution could be made to Reston Association rather than the Fairfax County Park Authority. We did discuss that with staff. We presented that to our staff coordinator, and staff said they could not, they did talk about it, but they said they could not support that. They wanted the contribution to be made to the Fairfax County Park Authority because that's who they believe would, know how to expend those funds. But I did want you to know that we did ask about that. So one of the recreation features that we're providing specifically as an active recreational opportunity for children is a climbing wall. And I think that some folks liked it, some people did not like it, but I wanted to kind of focus on the fact that one of the reasons for doing this is because it kind of, we believe, fits more naturally into the landscape. It kind of fits in with Reston. And instead of a piece of, metal or plastic equipment, that would be out there, we think that this is a more natural element that would blend in with both the active and passive facilities that we're proposing on the site. We've given some examples here. So we think it's more in the spirit of Richmond, but spirit of Reston. But one of the other elements that's important here is the fact that this climbing wall is also going to serve to help us with the grade on this site. So again, I'm going to turn to Aaron Vinson to talk a little bit from an engineering perspective, how this helps with the overall development of this portion of Vantage Hill. So Aaron?
Lynn, you took all of my great points. Thanks.
Oh, I'm so sorry.
In addition to what Lynn said, I mean, I agree with everything Lynn said. And, that one of the members, and I don't remember who, had mentioned that they were not crazy about the climbing wall and that we should explore some other piece of equipment. And we came away from the meeting and we thought about that. And we ultimately came to the conclusion that we really like the climbing wall. We think it's a good idea in addition to the reasons that Lynn just mentioned. It helps with the topography. You can see in the examples here that they can be built into the slope. By also building it into the slope, the community gathering area is on the high side of the slope, meaning you have an amenity that can be monitored. This climbing wall can be, somebody can have eyeballs on this amenity if their child is using it, but they can still be in the central gathering space. As opposed to some yellow plastic thing, this sort of blends into the natural landscape. We have proposed a different surface treatment at the top and bottom. I believe last time we were proposing sand in one area. We were now proposing mulch at both the top and the bottom. And then just the last point as to one of the reasons we decided to stick with this is not an engineering thing, but those of us who have had kids in this age who would use this and have been around to playgrounds recently, what we're seeing is this is for folks with kids of playground age, so to speak, climbing walls are a pretty desired amenity. And so we think it's going to get heavier use than a swing set, for instance, or something like that. So we think it's going to serve the residents well, to blend in with the sort of natural tree area that it's near, and it helps with the topography.
And maybe we can go to the next slide, Kelly, because this shows the overall gathering space. And Aaron, I don't know if you want to point out, I think you were mentioning that climbing wall is, the way that it's oriented is.
Yeah, so the climbing wall is, it's sort of, you can sort of see the label here. It's kind of in the middle of those two mulch areas. And so I don't know how obvious the grades are, probably not very, but the wall, the exposed face of the wall would be planned right in this area. So if you're in the flagstone, that trellis with the seating wall, if you're in that area, you can see what's happening here, but you're not looking at the face of a wall. The wall faces the tree preservation area. And so it's kind of an unobtrusive visually amenity. And then we have proposed both of the surface treatment at the top and bottom of wall to be mulch. So we really think that the climbing wall is a good way to get a highly used area, something that the residents will use quite a bit without lots of grading and removing additional trees in order to deliver a flat pad for a conventional slide and swings and things like that. So the more we thought about it, the more we really felt like the climbing wall made a lot of sense, and we wanted to keep it part of the design with some of the changes based on your feedback.
I think you guys pretty much said it all, but one other piece of feedback that I've gotten as I've circulated this plan in our circles is that people like it because they see it as wearing two hats. It's a nice amenitized area where there's something for kids to do when they're out there and playing. But when the kids go to bed, it's still a very natural area to sit and have a glass of wine with your neighbor, and you're not staring at, the plastic jungle gym. You're staring at, landscape boulder walls and heavily landscaped areas and a pergola, and it's just a very pleasant, serene, natural setting. And at the same time, we're getting a play amenity out of it. So in that way, we thought it wore two hats and was actually striking the right notes.
So if we could go to the next slide. We just wanted to share, I think, some of the materials that we have come up with for the pavers for the parking, as well as kind of that flagstone for the gathering area, just to kind of give you a sense of some of the quality of what we're talking about here. And I will sum up, I think that this concludes the issues that we had, but I do want to sum up that one of the questions was whether we had any outstanding staff issues. And I want to say that we've continued to work with the staff. We don't have any outstanding issues at this point. I know that there have been some questions, and Kelly can expand on this if needed. There were some questions about the turning area, for the fire truck, which we answered. But at this point, we don't have any outstanding issues. Who knows, because the staff doesn't finalize, their position until they actually write their staff report. They may come up with something that we have to address in the next couple of weeks, but we don't have anything that we need to address at this time. So with that, I think I've gone through maybe the questions and would be happy to, the questions from last time, I would be happy to take your questions tonight.
Yes, thank you, Lynn. And just as a reminder, in the packet that we all received, there was also a draft proffers that we received. So that was nice to be able to have those to reference. There was an updated statement of justification, and then the plans themselves, obviously, and then as basically the written summary of this response to our comments was included as well. So I'll take comments from the committee at this point. I just wanted to inform everybody, I guess William Pegues is having a bit of a trouble getting on. He was the only one who's indicated he's struggling tonight and unable to get in. So we're still trying to work through that, but
looks like he just joined, Rob. This is Mike. I see him in the list now.
okay. Anyway, all right. Any questions from the committee? I don't see any hands up. Oh, there's Tammy. Go ahead, Tammy.
Thank you. I am the one that did not like the climbing wall. I still don't like the climbing wall, but I'm grateful that you changed the surface to mulch versus sand. I notice now you have made the top mulch as well, and you've taken away a more elaborate or sophisticated landscape bed up there that kids would land in if they did climb the 5-foot wall, which is good. But in my opinion, what the kids will love are the boulders. Kids love to climb around on boulders. And I'm at a loss why you couldn't put a 5-foot slide down from the top to the bottom, but oh well. That's that. I think the flagstone is lovely. I think the pergola is wonderful. What I really have a problem with is the setup of the alleys, the width of the alleys. And could you put up the plan view, please? There's a very nice colored, yeah, do the one that's, yeah, that one. Units 8 through 11. we talked last night about canting those 4 units at angles similar to 1 through 3, so that the alley would be wider down there at the dead end. And the other thing I'm thinking in terms of, I'm going to buy one of these and try to live in it. And you have balconies overlooking the alleys, but the way the houses are oriented, you're looking right into your neighbor directly across the alley. If you canted these or angled these 8 through 11, you wouldn't be looking right into a neighbor's home, and your balcony would have some privacy from your immediately adjacent neighbor. Is there a reason you can't do that?
Well, one of the first things that comes to mind, if we angled 8 through 11, we'd be pushing those buildings further into the southwest quadrant, which would have a ripple effect in terms of pushing the stormwater chamber, which is underground but still needs to be there, further into that tree save area. And we'd be going into those, the critical root zones of those trees potentially, and it would be much more difficult to save those trees. So part of this, the original design of this site was to orient the development as, as west, which is to the plan left, and as north, which is plan up, as possible to save those trees. And this would be, well, I understand what you're saying, it would be partially counter to that.
Well, hey, not by many feet at all. I think you're hyper exaggerating that, to be honest. So that I'm not buying at all. Sorry. The other thing that I'm interested in is the existing Vantage Hill building, which is shown toward the right center of this particular diagram. Are their parking spots going to be close, or are they going to have a hike? We talked about this a little bit last time.
Yeah, so we met with those owners, some of the owners in those buildings specifically. I walked the site with them, and the closest, most parking spots, about 10 of them, right in front of their building, are going to be for that building, or for
Okay.
Vantage Hill. But Vantage Hill, of course, assign them to whatever building they want, and it would be that building. So no, their walk to their parking spot won't change.
So,
and that's where
great.
they're currently parking today. That's where a section of the parking lot currently exists, and that's where those unit owners park today.
Excellent. Thank you for that, because I could just hate like hell to have existing owners have to, have a ticket to get to their car. But I'm really concerned about the width of these alleys, especially at this south, border or dead end cul-de-sac. I really think you need to cant 8 through 11 and give more space, more privacy, and a better view for the buyers of those units. So those are my comments. I absolutely agree with Dick and Mr. Capella on the tree save issue. It's imperative that as many trees can be saved as possible. And I'm glad you're putting 15 in other areas of the Vantage Hill community to help restore total canopy for the whole area. So far, those are my comments. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Tammy. Other committee comments? I'm not seeing other hands raised. I'll just make a quick comment. Lynn, I know you already mentioned that the alleys that are proposed are at 23 feet. And I do think that we've seen some recent alleys as narrow as 20 feet in the area. And I do think that's getting a bit tight. And so I do appreciate that these are a little bit wider. And just wanted to just re-highlight that one element. This ends up being a product that maybe not everybody's used to from a standpoint of the type of residential product that it is, but Reston does have a nice mixture of products. So here we got some comments. Let me go to Mike. Well, let's see. Hold on. I got to open up my screen. Let's see. Okay, Mr. Pegues, how are you tonight?
Better.
All right.
My main comment has to do with the alleys. And, there are a couple around here that have alleys that are a little wider and a little narrower. That they're done elsewhere in Fairfax County or even elsewhere in Reston doesn't mean that they should continue to be done. It sounds more like an excuse than a reason. Frankly, I can't go along with an alley that's that narrow. I mean, I've gone and I've looked at some of these. I've been in some of these narrow alleys, and they are just terrible. That's all I've got to say. And I think something needs to be done with the alleys, especially where you have balconies across from them. That's just terrible. I mean, it's like, what does that remind me of? It reminds me of the alleys in New York City that you would see back in the tenement days. You might as well hang clotheslines across the alley. I'm sorry, but that's the way I feel about it. End of cycle, done.
All right, David or Sue or both?
Sure. Reston is tree-centered, and I don't think that we should lose any large, mature trees. And so I would like to see at least 5 to 6 more mature trees saved, even if that means a reduction of the number of units. Regarding the climbing wall, I, along with Tammy, was concerned about the safety of that. Certainly, using mulch is much better than sand, but make sure that you have at least a depth of 9 inches of mulch for safer surfacing. That's all.
And I'll pass for the moment.
Thanks, David and Sue. Mike Jennings.
Yeah, hi. I just want to say I like this project. I'm not seeing any major issues. I think the climbing wall is kind of cool. We don't, that's something different. We often are asking developers to do something different, and here's one providing something. And I guess I assume that they're going to put in a playground that's sufficiently safety designed and built so that they're not sued. So I'm not worried about, telling them how to do that. And as far as the alleys, Reston needs product like this. I know that many of us who don't live in these, we came here to single family homes on, quarter acre to 4/10 acre lots. This wouldn't be our first choice, but I know that my children's generation, this doesn't bother them one bit. The fact that they might have a balcony over an alley or whatever, this is fine with certain segments of our population. And I think we need to be open to that and not just always project what we liked when we moved here onto the broadening inventory of product here in Reston. In fact, they're saving some trees and they're doing their best, I think, and I'll be honest, the fact that DRB is not having a major issue with this is a big one for me. We're always like, oh, well, you should go in front of DRB. And well, here somebody has to, they have, and they've taken into account what DRB says, I think is great. So I just wanted to offer a different point of view on this project. Thanks.
Thanks, Mike. Tammy, do you have another comment?
Yes, I do. What is the price point of these units, please?
Well, no, we don't have a crystal ball, and these units would be for sale in about 18 months if everything goes to plan in an ever-changing market. But I would project these to maybe be in the 700s.
And how many bedrooms and baths, please?
3 to 4 bedroom. Bath count would be, I think, 3.5.
Okay. Yeah, I am so supportive of Vantage Hill being able to sell their property to a fine development. And if you can't 8 through 11, I would be thrilled, because that will give a little bit more width to the alley down there. I have no clue how people would turn around in that space. they'd almost have to back all the way up to Vantage Hill Road into the, little throat there at the end of it. So I'm really worried, very worried about the narrowness of the alleys.
A couple quick points on that, because I understand where you guys are coming from. But sort of 2 points. One, we do a lot of townhouse developments, and I'll tell you, these are about the widest alleys we've done in recent memory. So there's sort of, I know that, some of you folks have said, just because it's done elsewhere doesn't mean it can't be done better here. And I hear that, but just when we talk industry standard, which again is not an end all be all, but these are actually very wide alleys. And then the other thing, it's interesting that we're all talking about this thing that we've actually spent the last 6-8 months going to great pains to hide so nobody ever sees. This development was designed so that the minimum number of eyeballs ever are on this alley, right? So this alley is solely for these residents. Nobody's going to have to get to the end of the alley and figure out how to turn around, because the only people going down here are the people who live in these units. So I just wanted to kind of make sure everybody's aware that we're trying to hide this thing that we're all worried about, that we've tried to make it so the only folks who see it are the folks who are accessing their garages, is what we've been shooting for.
Well, wait a minute. That what you just said is not true. With all due respect, you're going to have delivery people, you're going to have service people, and you're going to have guests going down these alleys. They are going to be visible.
No, I don't expect to have a high guest count. As Lynn touched on earlier, there's there are dozens and dozens of on-street parking spaces. We also have a dedicated turnaround for fire trucks and other large vehicles within the alley, so I'm not worried about delivery vehicles. The people coming down this alley are the people who know where they're going. This is going to be the people traversing this are very familiar with the area they're trying to get to.
Aaron, I'm just not buying that. Sorry. You've got 28 units. There are going to be guests. You don't have dozens and dozens of on-street parking.
We have about 50,
We have
right,
about
Lynn?
50. We have
Yeah,
about
and
On site,
on street in
on
addition.
street.
Yeah,
50
50
On street.
parallel
on street.
places.
Yep,
That's correct.
yeah. And that doesn't count the
And-
parallel parking on North Shore that's just around the corner.
Well, wait a minute. Yeah, okay. Now we're really pushing it. But you're assuming that the on-street parking is not currently being used by existing development. You know that that's wrong.
No, I think it's available to the public today, and it will be tomorrow.
It is
maybe. Yeah.
available, but you're assuming that this new cluster is the only ones that's going to need it, and that's not the case.
I think the only point we're trying to make is that it is existing there today. It is not exclusively for the use of this development nor any development, but those spots do exist directly adjacent to this site. And from our experience and our multiple site visits, they're not heavily used.
Okay, what is the grading between the street and getting to this this north-south alley part of the community? You said right now there was a 12-foot grade drop between the street and the top of that crest. What is it going to be? Is that going to be cut down?
So the areas in front of units 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, that was the area where I was referring to before, where the existing condition is that it drops down considerably from the street. So that area, the front yard, will get filled and landscaped as shown. And then most of the grade and then gets absorbed, or grade drop rather, gets absorbed through the unit itself by burying the fronts and exposing the rears. So in that way, we use the units to absorb the grade. The alley is relatively flat in that dimension, and then the next big drop happens in front of units 8 through 11, and then it goes down and ties into existing grade in that tree save area. The total topo drop across the site, Aaron, correct me if I'm wrong, but is it in the high 20s?
The total drop from the corner of Vantage Hill and Wainwright to the area where we're preserving the trees is about 20. But just to the total drop from the corner of Vantage Hill and Wainwright, so near Unit 1, as we propose it, down to the Central Plaza area in front of Unit 11 and Units 11 and 14, 15 is about 10 feet.
Okay, and are you saying that the street grade is above the alley grade?
Yes.
Yes, ma'am. So the garages for units 1 through 7 would basically be in the basements of those units. And you would enter at the main level from Wainwright as a walking into the unit.
Tammy, can I go on to John
Yes,
for his comment?
Absolutely, please do.
As you were talking, I just had a thought to potentially help with Tammy and William's concern. What if you were to angle 8 through 11 towards the trees and swap that with move the stormwater over to the west side of those units? Not sure if you can fit it or not, but that would alleviate their concerns if that's a possibility. Just something to think about.
If I understand what you're saying, John, I think that would be difficult because you still need driveways to get into those units. Now, as I say that, I'm wondering if I fully understand your suggestion.
I think he's talking about moving it up, Aaron, and that's where the fire truck turnaround is.
I see. Okay. Yeah, right. There's a fire truck turnaround there, which would also be where larger trucks like delivery vehicles, if they ended up back there, could go. We also typically try to hold a pretty generous distance from the fronts of units to the next unit. So that's about a 35-foot dimension or so from the front of unit 12 to unit 11 to try and make it so 12, 13, and 14 don't feel kind of smushed in, so to speak.
No, I guess what I'm saying is, well, I think Tammy was saying sliding 8, 9, 10, and 11, angling them towards the east. And I believe that's where I don't have the full set of plans in front of me because I received those last time. But I believe you have stormwater in there, and I believe it's underground. Maybe I'm wrong. And
No, that's correct.
And switching your underground stormwater from the east side of those units to the west side of the units may give you space because you can certainly drive on top of the stormwater units. Just a thought. It may not be a good solution, but something to consider.
But how is that, Aaron, I guess my concern, how does that impact that limits of clearing that we're
Yeah, I
trying
mean,
to
I think
maintain?
I think. Sorry, I'm trying to think through this.
Where's our sanitary sewer line located? In the alleys?
It's in the alley.
Doesn't that come up through here?
Well, is it possible? It's probably possible. I think it results in significantly more impervious area. It results in significantly less open space. It shrinks that amenity space in the middle. I don't want to totally dismiss it. I mean, we can always look at it, but my initial reaction is I have trouble seeing how that results in an overall improvement. I mean, it certainly makes the alley much wider. I mean, the alley then becomes about 20 feet wider, which would, I think, actually sort of start to feel a little silly. I think. I don't know. I'm just rambling. Sorry. We'll keep thinking about that.
Thanks, Aaron. David?
Yeah, thanks, Rob. You had the stormwater management slide up. I'm sorry, could you put that back up?
Right.
Okay, so I too have some difficulty with the numbers and the percentage numbers of large trees that are being taken away. What percentage of your stormwater management is done on site and controlled on site, and what percentage of it is off, going off?
It's 100. Well, do you mean, are you talking about volume of runoff?
Yeah.
Or are you talking about how much of our requirement we are meeting within our project limits?
I'm talking about runoff.
Okay. We're the net result for stormwater runoff after this project is done is that the peak release rate of runoff leaving the site for the 1, 2, and the 10-year storm it will be 10 to 20% lower than it is today.
With your construction and
Correct.
your stormwater, on-site stormwater management.
Correct.
Okay. Okay, thank you.
I'm going to give a few of my comments that kind of echo a little bit of what Mike Jennings had said. One of the things that I like about this plan, I actually had seen other plans that were being proposed for this site to help Vantage Hill out, and they were much more dense. They were much more not as sensitive to some of the concerns that we're hearing tonight. And I think when you try to balance what Vantage Hill is trying to get out of this and the benefit of that will help serve them and the sensitivity that's been placed on this one, it's a balancing act. It really is. What I liked about how the applicant has come back, we've seen time and time again these type of products with littered with the utilities and the utilitarian nature of some of these units, and they've done a tremendous job of trying to work and hide those unsightly utility issues a great deal, which has contributed to making these alleys very unsightly. I like how they added some decorative pavers to the driveways to kind of increase that aesthetic look in some of these alleys. While I might not be a personal fan of this particular residential product, again, yeah, my daughters and the next generation seem to be all of a different sort, and they're looking for different product and certainly something that's a little bit more on the affordable scale. I think it is important that DRB has already kind of given somewhat of a conceptual blessing of this project, and so for those reasons alone, I just think that the applicant's done a very good job, and if there's some things that could be at least considered between units 8 and 11, even if it's just hey, we'll take a look at it, but we're not able to guarantee it. Maybe that's a support. I mean, the underground stormwater management is a little bit farther from those units, but the more you increase the units away from the alley, the more you're increasing impervious area, and now you're adding more to your stormwater. And that is one thing that hasn't been fully talked about here. This development is quite efficient in terms of its balance between adding impervious area and additional impervious area versus not. And so that also helps with the stormwater for the region. So just something to consider. All right, any other committee comments?
Rob, I lost my raising my hand, but I found but I am able to unmute myself, so here I am. Can
All
I
right.
add one other quick question? Didn't we ask you to check out whether or not the Dominion might go along with having all electric service in these units?
And I think, Robbie, that's something that you will continue to explore as these units are designed and you're going forward. I don't think that we have a definitive response on that yet. Is that correct, Robbie?
That's correct.
We're happy to take a look at that, but we haven't reached a final decision on that.
And the other thing that you could be doing is making sure that you have at least one, if not the capability of at least one or two, if not two, of the charging garages would make a big difference. I'm in a cluster that's has townhomes that doesn't have that advantage because we don't have hardly any garages. So I hope that that's going to be considered.
Are you referring to electric car charging stations?
Not a station, but in your garage. You don't need them.
Yes. Yeah, we've yeah,
It's
in
in
the
the
garage. Yeah,
proffers.
we've committed to that
Yeah.
with the county to
Good.
providing the wiring needed to install those stations in the garages.
Right,
Good.
it's in the proffers.
Yeah,
that
there's a
that will be
draft
provided.
proffer
Good.
for that, Dick.
Yeah.
Okay, I'm almost prepared to make a
Can I ask a question?
motion
first?
to approve, but I want to ask you, I would make one other point about with respect to the large trees. You know, we're only 6 trees away, and if you all could take a good look and do your best effort to have at least half of the big trees saved. Now, I realize that some of these big trees hang over the the slant in part of the property there. But the ones behind my house have been leaning that way for 20 or 30 years, and they're doing pretty well. I'd love it if you could take a look and at least get half the difference, which would be three more saves in the large ones. That would help a lot, I think. I think you've done you haven't solved all the problems with the alleys, but you've made some very reasonable progress, I thought. And I also thought that it was important to me that the staff has not identified any other problems so far. So that makes me a little more comfortable. I think you're doing a good job in answering good questions about visitor parking. So, and I kind of like the climbing wall. I got a bunch of kids that just seem to love them. And that it's a nice alternative. And even if it doesn't go over well, it's not the end of the world.
Can I have one question, please?
Sure. Let me go to Tammy, and then I do want to ask Commissioner Carter if he would like to make any comments or questions after Tammy.
Yeah, what is this with gas meters? I thought that we all agreed that climate change is a real thing and we're trying not to use fossil fuels. And now you're talking about gas meters? Why on earth would you put gas in these units?
We can't commit at this point to not having gas. It's still the market expectation to have gas cooking. So we can't at this point commit to not having gas in these available to these units, but it is something we'll continue to look at.
I will tell you, I had the top of the line gas range. And then I found out about the gases emitted by open gas ranges inside a home and switched to the help me with what kind it is, induction. Oh my God, induction is so much better, so much cleaner, so much easier to keep clean and look beautiful. I would never go back to gas. People are writing about that all the time on Nextdoor about how great induction is. Please don't fall into that trap of people needing gas. When you have induction, you would never go back to gas. So please do not put gas in this. Development is absolutely not smart to do for our climate and our planet. Thank you.
Thank you, Tammy. Commissioner Carter, do you have any comments, questions, suggestions? John, I saw you unmuted, but I don't hear you.
Oh, I thought you asked for Commissioner Carter, but I didn't.
I know I did.
Okay.
Yes. So you said the driveways are paved, and I think what you mean is the parking areas are paved. Am I right?
We have pavers in the parking areas and also in the driveways.
The driveways too?
By pavers, we're referring to like the red
There
brick
you go.
set pavers, as opposed to asphalt pavement, which is the alley material.
Okay. So I think what we've been doing on these last ones is electric charging stations and solar panels as an option for every townhouse. And yes, Tammy is right about the gas. Probably not the best choice for cooking these days. I think we should check with DRB about this alley system and the spacing. The ones we've been doing lately are the 6-foot landscape area, and then the alley is anywhere from 20 to 22. So if you want to know what we have been doing.
And I would point out that we are 23, so we
Yeah.
are wider than that.
Yeah, it's better to be narrower, I think, and leave more for the landscape area. But it's such a small dimension, it probably doesn't matter that much. It's the overall dimension that's important. You don't necessarily have balconies off the alley. I know some of these units do, but you don't necessarily have them here. Am I correct? That's usually an option.
Yeah, well, yeah, but we'd assume that many people would opt for that option.
Yeah. So those are my comments. If you want to do design, if you're going to move units around, I think I would. Tammy is proposing canting those units on the right side of the one alley. You might also look at sliding the units on the left side up just enough so that you could get a 20-foot wide turnaround. That might work as well. At least it would solve the turnaround problem. I'm not sure it solves the alley problem, but that's just a suggestion. Okay, those are my comments. But we do want the EV stations and the solar panels as an option for these units. And I didn't know we were doing gas anymore for cooking anyway. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Carter.
Rob, I certainly agree with Commissioner Carter, and I was just going to ask if someone makes a recommendation here, if we could ask for some level of additional trees in the rest of the development, whether it's 10 or 12 or something like that. Nothing major, but just a little bit more to help our canopy replenish itself.
All right, and then I see William Piggies has a hand up.
Yes, I do. It's basically about the induction ranges or stovetop cooking. Those are not just like a replacement thing. They're actually the new high end of cooking as opposed to gas. These are going into restaurants now because you can actually, on the higher end versions of them, you can control the actual temperature of the surface as opposed to it just being high, low, and medium. They make lower cost ones that are high, low, and medium and that kind of thing. But they are the new high end of cooking, is an induction range system. That's it.
Thank you, William. All right, so we've heard a lot of comments tonight. We've heard from the applicant. The applicant would like us to take a vote tonight, so do I hear a motion from anyone?
So moved, Kennedy.
Well, do you want to make the motion, Mr. Kennedy?
Yes, but I'm going to be open to at least trying some things like the induction stuff to not have a requirement for or not pursue for our client here that wants approval, that they agree that they will at least propose that. And if the county can't work through and the Dominion's not going to commit to it, then we'd have to go back to it. But I think they should at least be asked to try. And I'd like to see them put in, find a way to get 3 more big trees saved. And I don't have any other particulars.
All right, that's a motion by Dick Kennedy to approve the plan based on a couple, I'll call them conditions, but there are suggestions that the applicant consider. Do I hear a second? Well, I will second the motion.
We are unmuted, so.
Yeah, so, yeah. So soon, Dave, we can hear you. So, so we have a motion. Tammy's would like a friendly amendment. Go ahead, Tammy.
I would like to make a friendly amendment that gas is precluded from this project.
I wouldn't mind saying that, but I just hope that it doesn't kill the proposal, because somebody else is going to overrule that. But I think we should definitely try.
Who would overrule it?
Nobody's going to.
Michigan would love it.
I hope that the county wouldn't, but I don't know. They haven't been willing to push across the board electric stuff, but maybe maybe somebody else can tell me differently.
I mean, Dick, I liked your motion where you're asking the applicant to seriously consider not using natural gas. And I think that's about as far as we can go. I mean, there's no ordinance, there's no code, there's nothing we can point to that restricts the use of natural gas at this time. And
You need to speak up when he finishes.
we just have to understand where we are in the world right now as things are changing, and we can try to educate people, but demanding it or requiring it as a part of an application, I think that starts to put us in an awkward position.
Okay, are there any other any other things? We've got 3 on the motion now. Three more trees, and what else?
Can we ask for 10 more new trees somewhere in the development?
Yes, and yes, the gentleman that added other perhaps smaller trees, new trees in appropriate places, maybe 7 or 8. I think the number was, who had that?
I think they're already planting 15 in other areas of the cluster.
Yeah, I'm suggesting a few more is what I'm asking for.
And who's talking?
This is John Coppola.
John, thanks.
I'm sorry, when you say a few more,
10 more. What I was suggesting, Dick said 7 or 8. Either one is fine with me.
7 or 8, okay.
Okay.
Dick, I had asked for 5 to 6 additional mature trees, at least to see if those could be saved. Would you bump your 3 up a little bit?
Well, the number I was using was, they told us in the beginning that there were 17 big trees that they were going to have to take out, and that they had 11 that they were going to save. And I was trying to get it to 50-50, and they had made arguments for the point of some of these big trees are on a bad leaning situation that might not be savable, and I would use their best interest to try to get that. But
okay. So maybe 3 to 4. Yeah.
Sure.
Okay.
I don't.
And I just have one other friendly amendment. It's great they're going back to DRB for final review, but I would like to include a friendly amendment that might say to incorporate recommendations and modifications proposed at DRB at their final review on 9/20/2022. Just because they will be probably addressing alleyway and some of the other concerns that were talked about tonight.
Okay, I'm not sure I understand what that is, what that addition says.
It was to incorporate recommendations or modifications proposed by DRB at their final review tomorrow night.
Yeah, so they don't have to come back and forth. Yes, I can
Right,
go
right.
along with that.
Okay,
But
Thank
most importantly, do you understand that, Rob?
I'll make it a good attempt at it here, Dick, and try to explain all the friendly amendments that I believe.
Okay,
All right, so just one point to remind everybody. I mean, Commissioner Carter's been listening in tonight, and certainly everything that we've talked about, he's also going to be looking to the applicant to before final approval. There's still a ways to go, and Commissioner Carter has a lot of say. So I think so. What my point is, a lot of what we talk about in this, and some of these friendly amendments, and some of these requests that we have of the applicant, while maybe we're not making it a mandatory thing to the degree we can, but Commissioner Carter certainly has that ability to do that later. So I'll just leave it at that. But so as I understand the motion, Dick Kennedy made a motion to approve the plan under the following conditions: that the applicant considered to use no natural gas, that they try to save 3 or more trees, of the bigger trees if they can, and that they plant 7 or 8 trees elsewhere throughout the entire development, and that they that we recognize and that they can incorporate recommendations from tomorrow night's DRB meeting into their final plan, and they don't have to come back to us for that. That's how I understand the motion.
sounds good. Sounds correct to me.
All right, so all in favor of that motion, let me take a quick just rundown vote. William Pegues.
No,
Okay, Rebecca.
Approved.
Okay, let's see, sorry, Mike Jennings.
Yes.
All right. Let's see, we have John.
Approve.
Okay. David
approve,
and Sue.
approve.
Okay. Trying to be Dick already have, we have, I approve since I made the motion. Tammy.
Abstain.
Tammy abstains. Okay, did I miss anybody?
You had my vote, right?
Yes. Yes.
I've seen
All right.
some people not vote for their own.
So,
Okay, but
Sorry.
I'm for it.
I guess it would be.
all right, so we got it with approval. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 approved. 1 no and 1 abstained. Total of 9, which seems right. So congratulations.
Thank you so much.
So obviously you heard tonight some recommendations that we made, and we just look for you all to do your best efforts as you move forward with the process, and not only with DRB, with Commissioner Carter and the rest of the process, and we're just always trying to do what's best for Reston in the area, and you're just hearing a lot more environmental concerns from this committee, and you're gonna continue to hear that from not only this committee, but I think the rest of the world as we all move forward with the changes in the climate. So.
And by the way, one of the issues I just feel obliged to add, that one of the reasons I'm looking for any way to get this done properly is that there's 150 other fairly reasonably priced units in Vantage Hill that if we can help them survive, that's a good thing for preserving reasonable market housing.
Here, here. Thank you, Dick Kennedy.
Okay, and I think that'll, you certainly know those things, Lynn, but I would not, I would make sure I use that part of the issue as well.
Yes. Thank you.
All right, I'm just gonna, let the applicant can depart from the meeting. We really don't have any other agenda items. I did want to say to the committee, we do believe we'll have applications before us in October and November. The county would like to come to our meeting in November to give us an update on the Parking Reimagined program that they're underway with. And so so they chose the November date for that presentation. I guess the one question I have of the committee, we were asked by Fairfax County, apparently there's someone in Reston who's doing a daycare facility and they're going to expand their daycare. It's an in-home daycare. I don't have all the particulars. They haven't been sent to me yet, but I understood it from going like 6 students to 12 students in some. So they had to do a special exception in order to do that daycare expansion. And the question was, do they need to come before the Planning and Zoning Committee? I said yes, just because it's a special exception, and I felt all special exceptions I felt should come to this committee, but I wanted to throw it out there, I guess, only because I know my sense is that this is just a mom and pop operation with a low budget, and I don't want to increase someone's costs. But I also thought that there could be neighborhood issues, there could be traffic concerns, there could be where do the kids play? Has that all been thought through? And I don't know. I'm curious.
I agree with you, Rob. I think there are some issues in the neighborhood that they have to have a good argument about parking, because that could, depending on where it is, be an issue. And it's not the sort of thing you want to lose on without giving it a try, because it's an important thing to do. So
I also
And-
agree.
and-
I agree, Rob. One of the first applications I ever heard on this committee was for something very similar to that in North Reston, and there was a lot of good questions asked of the daycare person. What about dropping off in the morning and all this stuff? And I think those are worthy of us to go through with them.
Okay, that's good feedback. I couldn't remember seeing one of those, but then it's just memory.
Yeah, historically, we've had at least a couple over the years of daycare centers.
Okay, so they're supposed to come to us next month, but I have not received any further correspondence, so we'll just be waiting. All right, I don't have anything else, but does anybody else have anything to add before we close, or I'll take a motion to adjourn?
I just wanted to thank you all very much for your time and consideration. So just want to say thanks much. Appreciate it.
Yeah, I'm sorry, Lynn, I should have given you at least an ending there. That's
no,
true.
I just wanted to say thank you. It was a very thoughtful discussion. Appreciate it. Thank you.
All right, thanks, Lynn. All right, hearing no comments, I'll take a motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn.
All right.
Second, William.
Second.
All right, everybody.
thanks, everybody. It was a good
Good night.
discussion,
Yeah, thanks for all the comments. It's
and I
good.
think we're better off for it. Thanks.
Yep.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye.